Alright guys, what's going on today? I thought I'd make a little video on the Stipe Miocic Dana White feud and the fact that Dana wants Stipe to fight Dan Cormier. Now I think there's something behind that. I think that he feels Dan Cormier could defeat Stipe, and it creates a little bit more interest in the heavyweight division, because both these guys really, aside from Cain Velasquez, have cleaned out their divisions. And of course John Jones is not around right now, and that remains to be seen, with John and his polygraph shit and his tainted supplement stuff, what is exactly going on. Now Stipe feels disrespected. Of course, he grabbed the belt away from Dana, and I don't blame him, man. Stipe is the best fighter, the best heavyweight, I think, at this point in history. You have to give that to him. Guys are saying Cain as well, but I don't think Cain's health is always an issue. So I don't think you can put him up there with Stipe. And I also think you have to throw Fedor in there in his prime Fedor versus Stipe. Wow, that'd be a hell of a fight. Of course, Fedor now is kind of a joke, but it happens to everybody. It'll happen to Stipe. It'll happen to everybody. It'll happen to John Jones when he comes back. But Stipe wants a new contract. He deserves a new contract. Granted, he's not the biggest draw, and that's the problem, because he's a straightforward dude. Doesn't talk a lot of smack, although he did get a little animated at the press conference after the fight, which I loved. Thought that was awesome. We need to see more of that from Stipe. Probably he will develop a bigger following if he does do that. But in my opinion, Stipe versus Dan Cormier, who wins that fight? Kenny Florian was saying he does not want to see that fight happen because he thinks that Dan Cormier is just too old right now to keep up with the heavyweights, the prime heavyweights, and I think he's right. I think Stipe takes that fight because he can sort of match Cormier's wrestling ability somewhat. Alexander Gustafsson gave Cormier a hell of a fight, and I think Stipe would follow that game plan to do the same thing. So Stipe versus Cormier, it's probably coming up, unless Cain Velasquez pulls a miraculous recovery and gets into the picture. I want to see Cain and Stipe more than I want to see Stipe and DC fight. But we're probably going to see both those fights, actually, I would think. So it's a great time in the heavyweight division of the UFC, because it's pretty clear now what Stipe needs to do, one way or the other, DC or Cain. And the way Stipe's fighting, I favor him in both those fights. I'm a fan of Stipe's now. I did not like him at first, but you gotta respect the guy. He tells it like it is, does what he needs to do, doesn't make a fool out of himself. And he dominated Ngannou. After that first round, which was could have went either way, the real fighter won that fight. The guy with the experience, the best fighter won clearly. Ngannou's got a lot of work to do. He was exposed in that fight. There's no doubt about it. The UFC wanted Ngannou to win that fight, and rightfully so. He's more of a character. He probably would be more of a draw than Stipe at this point, but you cannot take away what Stipe did in that fight. He just dominated a guy who nobody thought could be dominated like that because of his incredible power.